Okay, everyone, we need to talk. Champions Festival is a bit of a hot topic right now. Surprisingly, I didn't actually intend it for it to be when I was planning this video, but I realized it is a little bit, which is kind of interesting. I'm doing, of course, a design analysis. I've done a few of these before. This time I'm looking at Champions Festival, World Championship promo for many years, and also a stadium card that's actually seeing some play right now, which is kind of interesting. And first of all, looking at the star rating, this is a community poll I do on my channel. If you don't participate in this, you can do it. You can check it out on my community tab. It's pretty cool. I do various community posts there about polls about upcoming videos, things like that. And I think you'll definitely enjoy checking it out. But looking at what we have here, it's from 0 through 4 stars. And it's actually perfectly balanced in the middle with 2 stars out of 4. And I rate it out of 40, so I'd be 20 out of 40. So we see that a lot of people said 2, but then also some people said 1, some people said 3, and 4 and 0 are also relatively common answers. So this is a bit weird. It's not very clear at all. Obviously, it's a bit of a weird card, hard to look at with so many people saying 4, so many people saying 0. This is just crazy. And this comes down to 2 main facts. One is the card honestly is pretty decently designed. I feel like calling it 4 is a bit bold, but yeah, I don't know. We'll get into it. And then the fact that it's a Worlds promo, you can either ignore the fact that it's a Worlds promo and just look at it like a regular card, or you can only look at it as a Worlds promo. And that's kind of weird. And so we're going to be talking about that, and I will be addressing the elephant in the room of the fact that it is a Worlds promo, but first we need to talk about its regular design. Starting with, and this is my 4 different criteria, is it interesting in a vacuum? All 4 out of 10. So you can go check that out. I have a video in my description just where I go over the 4 criteria if you're interested in that. But Champions Festival says once during each player's turn, and of course it's a stadium, so it sticks in play, stays in play until another player bumps it, and each player can use the stadium as well, which is an important aspect. Once during each player's turn, if that player has 6 Pokemon in play, then we heal 10 damage from each of their Pokemon. So 10 damage is not a lot to heal. And you need to have a full bench, essentially. There are a few ways of turning this off, but not in current standard format. Keep in mind, Champions Special has been in standard format for many, many years now. I want to say 10 years. I'm not sure if it's been quite that long, but it's been quite a while. And so we see that it heals, but it's not too much. Theoretically, if you could spread your damage counters around, you could heal a bunch, but that's not a very common mechanic. And it's okay, right? You need a full bench, which could make you more vulnerable. It's obviously a cost required. It's okay, it's fine, but nothing amazing. Oftentimes, you see really interesting stadiums that really change the game. This one doesn't change the game too much, and I think it's not bad, but it's kind of boring in my opinion. And spoilers, many people think this card was designed to be bad, to be like a really not very playable card. In some ways, it just looks very underwhelming, and so in a vacuum, it's only going to get a 4 out of 10. It's not awful, but it's not great. It's underwhelming, I have to say. But we are going to look at it in context, and I wasn't sure exactly what to talk about with the context of it because it's a stadium, and it also doesn't have too many synergies. But there are a few very important things to talk about. One, it's a stadium, which means it can be used to counter other stadiums. And I'm going to mostly be talking about it in current standard format. I don't really know how much play it saw in past standard formats at all. I know it didn't see much play. I can't think of any specific decks that played it. But in current standard format, it's seeing a little bit of play. It's a counter to Path to the Peak, a very devastating stadium. And this is the main reason why Champions Festival has a lot of power behind it. Path to the Peak turns off all abilities of Rulebox Pokemon in play. We see Gardevoir EX to the left here, which is actually covered up. Its ability is covered up, but it has an ability. Stuff like Lumineon V has an ability. Lugia V-Star has an ability. That's very good. Regieleki VMAX, many decks have. I'd say maybe half the decks have abilities that are turned off by Path to the Peak. Maybe more, but Path to the Peak is certainly unpleasant for those decks. Oh, Genesect V as well. And so you can use Path to the Peak to shut down those decks and be more of a counter-style deck, slow the game down, or you can even tech it into decks that will be hurt by themselves to also hurt your opponent hopefully more and stop them in certain scenarios. So having a counter stadium to Path to the Peak is very important. You could play other cards to counter stadiums, but really the best play is another stadium. And if it helps you in the process, it's very nice. It's important to help you as well. Now, Champions Festival isn't the best counter stadium. There are, in my opinion, better options, in many people's opinions, right? This doesn't see too much play, but there are stadiums like Mesa Goza, Beach Court, that are pretty safe stadiums that provide value to any deck. Probably not Beach Court. Beach Court will provide value to any deck, but it specifically helps Lost Zone, so you don't just want to be checking that in any deck. But a card like Mesa Goza, especially in a deck like Gardevoir EX, I think is pretty strong. But Champions Festival does see playing Gardevoir EX because of Gardevoir EX has a really interesting ability here. It says that as often as you like during your turn, you can accelerate Psychic Energy from your discard pile to your Pokemon in play. But every time you do this, you damage that Pokemon. So we see this specifically with cards like Drifloon and Gardevoir. If they're able to heal damage from them, they can actually accelerate more energy. So in the case of it does 20 damage, so Drifloon, you can't actually accelerate more energy. But if you're with something like there's a new tool coming out that will allow it to have more HP. It's very similar to Cave of Toughness, Big Charm. So, if you are able to heal 10 damage from Drifloon, you can stick more. You can actually stick more damage on. It's kind of a weird thing to talk about. With something like Baby Gardevoir, is where it's seeing play right now. It does more damage for each energy attached to it. You can accelerate more energy because if you accelerate all the energy, you're eventually going to die. It actually stops you before you die. But you're not able to accelerate infinite energy to it, despite supposedly being able to do so with Gardevoir. You cannot actually do that because you'll die. So Champions Festival will stop you from dying. Of course, it only heals you 10, and that's okay. But it's only one more energy in play. So it's outclassed by some other things, which I'll talk about later. Most importantly, it's outclassed by Crystal Cave directly. Well, not directly, but Crystal Cave, you don't need a full bench. It heals 30 only on Metal and Dragon Pokemon. But the Pokemon that want the most healing are actually those types. We see stuff like Drowdon VMAX. I don't say something like Corviknight VMAX as well. You could even say Rayquaza VMAX is a control deck, which isn't seeing too much play, but that's a thing. Dragon Pokemon and Metal Pokemon really love healing, so Champions Festival is often outclassed by that. We see it's even directly weaker than something like Rough Seas. Of course, that's another type-specific card. Same thing as Crystal Cave, except instead for healing Metal and Dragon Pokemon, it healed, I believe, Lightning and Water Pokemon. So it's a bit weak. And even a card like Rough Seas saw play, and Crystal Cave sees some play, but more so specifically Crystal Cave more so as a counter stadium. The healing 30 isn't even that good, so healing 10 is not that impressive, and the fact that it heals all your Pokemon isn't that impressive because most of the time you're only going to have damage on one Pokemon, maybe two. It does allow you to heal certain other things, which I'll talk about later as well, but it is still cool. It's fine. It's not too good. It's a 6 out of 10. Right? I think it's a pretty solid card. And it's just kind of cool. Has some synergies, counter to Path. Not as interesting as some other cards, but it's a stadium. It's a pretty tame card, but it's cool. Now, is it fun to play against? This is a bit of a weird thing to talk about. But I mean, it's fine. But it's not great. Like, really, most stadiums are really cool because you can also get value from, or some stadiums at least. Obviously, a card like Path to the Peak is not fun to play against, but most stadiums, you get value out of. Like Beach Court's cool. You can retreat your Pokemon and stuff. Champions Festival, you can heal, but it's not that useful, especially unless you're specifically designed to value out of it. It's pretty rare. However, it doesn't actually counter some Pokemon, which makes it a bit annoying. Notably, Hawlucha and Teleon VMAX and Sableye, which spread damage counters around the board. Champions Festival will help counter those, and not necessarily Hawlucha, but definitely Sableye. Or not always Sableye either, but definitely Inteleon VMAX. You cannot really build up damage on your opponent's side of the board as much with Champions Festival in play. But it's not that bad. You can get value. It's not awful. It's 5 out of 10, right? It's pretty mediocre. And I think you can kind of start to see where it's like getting pretty middle of the road. So yeah, and then last category, as I said, stadiums fun to play against, a little weird, but interaction between two players is always cool, and I think Champions Festival adds that element. And is it balanced? I guess like it's not that good. I just have to say that. It's not overpowered, and most cards aren't that good. So Champions Festival is a good, not that good card, I'll say. Having healing, it's good, right? As I said, outclassed by Crystal Cave. It is very debatably very important as a counter to Path to the Peak. There are other stadium counters, but having another option in Champions Festival is good. And so then also it's mainly outclassed by stuff like Potion and Damage Pump, which can allow you to heal damage easier. And if you're being outclassed by Potion, like that's just not a good sign, because Potion's not a very good card. But then it has synergy with Gardevoir EXs, which is the main reason why it is actually, in my opinion, close to balanced, because it actually has value in the standard format. For many years, it had essentially no value, but now it has some value, which is nice. Essentially, just being able to heal 10 is enough, apparently. It's not like great. It's mostly there as a kind of path, but it's an okay card. It's actually going to get a 6 out of 10. It's a nice break from all these like super overpowered cards. It's decently balanced, I have to say. That gives it a total score out of 21 out of 40. That's pretty mediocre, right? The card's whatever. Okay, the chart's wrong here. I'll go back to the beginning. This is the right chart. I don't know why the chart's wrong in that slide. But this is the right chart. Originally saying it would be a 2 stars. I said it's 21 to 40, so pretty much the same thing. But if you've actually seen the original video where I talk about the categories, there's an other category. Yeah, so this is the card that the other category is essentially reserved for from the start. It's a Worlds promo. And what does that mean? I should have the card on the screen. It's not on screen. But it's essentially only accessible to players who went to the World Championship. It has been, I guess, printed in many World Championships. I believe it started in 2013. I'm not sure. But obviously, I don't know, there are a few hundred players at Worlds. I'm not really sure the exact number, but there's not enough to go around. They're very expensive, and realistically, they're just unobtainable to most players. There are many players who are free-to-play players on Live. You just can't get this card. It's literally impossible. Unlike any other card in the game, which you can get. I can get every card in the game except for this card, and this is problematic because if you can't get it, that's just bad, right? And there's not really there are some solutions I'm going to talk about and various ways of dealing with this, but right now it's bad. So it's going to have to lose some points from this. I end up docking it. I docked it 10 points because it's kind of problematic, because if you have this card that's not exactly it's in the format, but only certain players can get it, that's really bad. Obviously, if you have it, you can sell it, but there aren't enough to go around. It's absurdly expensive. And it's problematic, and it's going up in price now that's actually seeing play. It was expensive before it started play, because really the idea is it's like a collectible thing. Pokemon is a collecting game, or it's a card collecting thing. And so if, you want to show off your card, or you don't want to just get rid of all these cards. They're not just things to sell. They're things for you to treasure because they're awesome collectibles. You're like, oh, I did super well at Pokemon. I devoted massive amounts of time, and I got it. It paid off. And so you want to be able to show off the cards. Incidentally, it's kind of weird as well. When you talk about Pokemon internationally, of course, it's printed in various languages. I think it's 10 or so. And you get a copy of, I believe it's only one copy. I don't know if it's more. But you get a copy in every language. So that's kind of cool to celebrate. This is the World Championship. It's the World Championship. So you want to be able to look at all the various languages. And it's just kind of cool. So then that's fun, but obviously you can't. You're not going to be playing in cards that you can't speak the language of, and importantly, Pokemon, specifically in actual tournaments, will not let you play cards of languages that people just don't speak. So, in the United States, there's only one language that you can play in, which is English. I believe that's the only language. I don't believe Spanish is allowed, because pretty much everyone just speaks English, and if people are playing in Japanese, you couldn't read your opponent's cards, and that would be problematic, right? But in Europe, right, because of the just differences of how Europe works, there are various languages, right? People just speak more languages in Europe, and so you can play in, I don't know, I think you can certainly do English. I think it's Spanish, Italian, French, something like that. So you can actually have there are 4 times as many cards you can copies of this card you can play in Europe than in the United States, which is pretty crazy. And I believe the United States is also grouped in with Canada. I don't know if you can play French cards in Canada. It's kind of strange. But anyways, that's a problem for another day. It's kind of a weird thing. It's messy. Pretty much the whole thing is it's messy and it's really hard to get these cards. And really bad. Like in live, you can't play this. And live's not that good, but still you should be able to play this. And it's not live's fault, really. It's kind of live's fault, but it's mostly the issue of the fact that Tropical Beach is, not Tropical Beach, although Tropical Beach as well. Champions Festival is really hard to play, or to get. And I was going to talk about Tropical Beach. It's obviously in the same boat. Tropical Beach is the Other Worlds promo that was before Champions Festival. They actually saw play, and so they cut it. And this is where we see Pokemon's mentality. And so actually I'm going to get to a solution, and then I'll talk more about their mentality. The total scores, it's 11 out of 40. It's really bad because you can't play it. I originally actually had it lower. I ended up being too harsh, so here's the right star rating. So it's obviously this is lower than what many of you said, but obviously over 25%, like over 30% of you agreed. So it's like, and it is what it is, right? It's problematic. It's definitely problematic. There's not really a way you can say it's not a problem, unless you think it's a really, really bad card, like it's just not playable at all, in which case it doesn't really matter if you can get it or not, if you don't need it. And this is actually where we see Pokemon's mentality. Right now, for their quote-unquote solution, they've done nothing. This isn't really a solution, obviously. This is my solution one. That's the thing that they've done. Because the card's been really bad. So this is their mentality, that they want to make this bad card. Tropical Beach, it was a stadium that drew some cards and then ended your turn, which they're like, slap the end of turn on effect on this card. It's going to be awful. And then people played it. Literally, like the next day, I saw competitive play, and the same world championship it was given out, it almost won, which is like absurd, right? This card that's like essentially not out, but again, that's a issue for another day. It's the deck of the day. It's the deck of the truth, played by Raj Cawthon, debatably the most famous deck in Pokemon history. Probably not, but it's pretty famous. And so they stopped. They didn't like print. They printed it for 2 years. But because it was problematic, they wanted to get it out of the format. So people have made the argument that it shouldn't be playable at all, which is very understandable. But then, like, if it's not playable at all, if you want to be able to show off your card, you want to show off your stuff, it's cool, right? But because they've done nothing so far, it's obviously very easy for Pokemon, right? Because they don't have to do anything, which is understandable. And also it keeps the value of the card, as I said, because you can actually play the card. And that's fun. And if you're a world champion, or not necessarily a world champion, but a world qualifier, you'll be able to show off your cool cards, and that's fine. Obviously, the con here is that it doesn't solve the problem. So this isn't like really a realistic solution. When we're looking at the pros and cons, the con is it just doesn't work. So obviously, this is not the solution that is the best solution. I think people agree with that. If the card was completely useless, it's fine, but the card's not useless. In fact, some people have said, and this is not one solution I presented because it's not really a solution they can do now. But if you made the Welch cards in the future, just make it a card like, for example, Hop, a variation of Hop. Could just be whatever, some supporter that draws 3. I'll make it a unique supporter that draws 3, but like still a supporter that draws 3. So it doesn't really matter that it's a unique card. It's fine. It just doesn't have a unique effect. But they can't change that now. But so obviously they shouldn't just do nothing that's problematic. It still is the issue. We can't get this card. Solution 2, and this is it's a solution that I've seen tossed around. And it's debatably the most logical solution. Just ban the card. So if you know another thing about Pokemon, their mentality, they like not doing anything. They like keeping their hands clean, something like that, which kind of makes sense, right? You don't want to ban cards. I think banning cards is always a bad thing, unless it's necessary. So, and of course, people are thinking it's necessary. There needs to be some solution. So banning the card obviously removes the problem, and it's still pretty easy as well, right? It doesn't take massive amounts of action for Pokemon. It's not as easy as doing nothing, certainly. And so it's not great, right? It doesn't feel good to ban a card. Right? It removes a unique card from the format, which is a big issue. Like, it's not like the end of the world, but last time we saw like Bulba and Bryson Man banned, we saw Miss Magius banned, we saw Latinos Trump card banned. I believe those are the only cards banned in the modern era that were standard. I'm not sure, but they really don't like banning cards in standard. And so the fact that it removes the card from format, it makes them look bad. They don't like it. They don't want to take this card out, especially if it's not even that overpowered. It's not overpowered at all, right? So, like, it removes the card from format, and it's not great. it's a solution, but it doesn't feel good. And also, if you have the card, like now you can't play it, and that's just kind of annoying. Not that you were necessarily playing it before, but you could. You know, it's kind of annoying. Obviously, it's like a collectible, but it's not as cool if you can't play the card. Let's be honest. It's a card game, so you want to be able to play it. So this is it's an okay solution, though. This is one that I think is reasonable for Pokemon to do. I wouldn't be outraged if they did this. Honestly, they don't need to ban it, but I think it would be nice to address the situation. And now I've introduced and this is not just mine, but I've heard other people say variations of this, is reprint the card. The issue is it's a card with its own effect, and you can't have access to this card if you don't spend like absurd amounts of money, or obviously qualify for Worlds, which does require absurd amounts of money as well. So this obviously removes the problem, right? This other side said it fixes the problem. Because obviously now people can get their hands on the card. It doesn't. In fact, this is better because it keeps the card in the format. And it's a cool card, right? It's not the coolest card in the game, but it's still a cool card, right? Its natural score is like a 20 out of 40. It's pretty all right, pretty solid, right? Average, and it keeps the card's value as well. You can still, if they reprinted Champions Festival in the standard format, you can still play. Everyone can now play Champions Festival in like a regular set. Could be even a mini set. Doesn't matter too much. But you need to give people access to the card. But if you got the Worlds promo, you can play the Worlds promo. And you show up and people are just like, this is awesome, right? Like, it's a cool art, but way, way cooler. Because it's showing that you're cool, I guess. I mean, if you just buy it, you're not as cool. But like, if you got this awesome card, like, it's a really cool card. It's like meaningful, and now you can actually like play it without looking like feeling like you just have an upper hand on your opponent because you have this card that they don't, because they have the same card. And obviously this would like be put in the standard format. And it makes it fair, right? The issue is that it's not fair right now, and people really like the different arts. I do too, right? Special arts are really fun. And if they reprint it, this will make it accessible to everyone. So this is the solution I propose. I'm okay with them banning it. It's not like a desperately awful scenario, but it's not great. It doesn't feel great. They can even do this with Tropical Beach as well. They could reprint Tropical Beach. You could reprint it just for Expanded. Like in a set like Celebrations, that'd be fine. But Tropical Beach isn't a huge problem because they've essentially dropped Expanded and Legacy format as well. But Champions Festival, they really have to do something. And we'll see how this situation plays out. People are actually saying the card's going to be very good, which would be problematic. But because if no one can access it, if only like a few of the people can access it and it's super good, I think that's super problematic. It's not really good. I don't think it's going to be really good, right? The people are saying with Drifloon, and then I want to say it's Charm of Courage. It gives 50 more HP. It's super overpowered with Drifloon. It's not super overpowered with Drifloon, but some people think it is. Well, we'll see how it plays out. But I hope Pokemon does something cool about this. It's the potential to add this essentially new card to the format. It's nice, but we'll see what they do. I hope they do something. I'm interested in hearing your takes as well. I've heard various other takes, and it's cool. But it's interesting. It's controversial. Most fun. And I hope you enjoy this video, though. As I said, check out some stuff below in the description. And as always, I'm excited to see you in the next video. See ya.